Make this the best Halloween ever by pre-ordering my 2 brand new books coming out soon. The first is Phantom Phenomena, a hand-picked collection of the all-time scariest stories I've ever received, accompanied by atmospheric illustrations and field notes. Then there's Appalachian Folklore, an extraordinary catalog of the chilling history, creepy folklore, and rich culture of the Appalachians. These release October 15th and 8th, respectively. Pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. But hurry, because the first 100 pre-orders to verify via the link in the description or at eeriecast.com/verify will receive an exclusive hoodie and hardcover copy of Lore, a folklore horror novel. Send your scariest workplace stories to us at eeriecast.com/submit and rate and review Tales from the Break Room on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks.
Hi, welcome to Dead and Roasted. What can I get you?
Did you know we have a weekly ritual here at Dead and Roasted every Tuesday night? You see, the local wild dog pack comes by, growling at the drive-thru window threateningly, and we always carefully slide out a bowl of pure concentrated Italian espresso. They lap it up and go on their way. I dread to think what will happen the day they show up and we're out of beans. That's gonna be a bad Tuesday. Speaking of wild canines, boy do I have some creepy work-related stories to share with you, including a tale about a night alone at a cabin when something with claws and fur peeks out from the attic, and a truck-driving duo who encounters something that just isn't a normal coyote. These are tales from the break room. Terror in the attic. From Lurking Moonlight. My name is Jacob and I'm a painter. I was born and raised in northern Washington in a small town near the Canadian border. I don't want to reveal my exact location or the location of my encounter because I'm still here. Only a few people have been told about this. It's hard to tell my story in Washington because some movies about vampires and werewolves came out just before this happened, and it just so happened that those movies take place in Washington. So to this day, I keep quiet, unless I get on the topic of strange encounters, but still, I'm hesitant to share. Even after I get to know someone really well, I don't openly share this story. My coworker listens to your podcast over a Bluetooth speaker, and your podcast is the first time I've heard of others having these dog-man or werewolf-style encounters. I turned ghost white the first time I heard one of your episodes referencing a werewolf encounter. My employee, Cody, instantly knew something was up. I've worked with Cody for about 3 years. After he saw my reaction to one of your werewolf stories, he knew I was hiding something, and I ended up sharing my encounter with him. He's kept asking me to write it down so he can submit it to the show. Last year I wrote my initial encounter, but Cody says I need to give some background info on myself and what led up to the encounter, instead of simply saying I saw a dogman family while painting. So here it is. I started residential painting in high school for my uncle. I was saving up to buy my first truck. After high school, I thought I would try a different profession, but nothing else ever seemed to pique my interest. So it was back to my uncle and painting. My uncle suggested I go to a tech school and get formal training in the trade, if it would be my permanent career. So I went to a tech school. Yes, there are schools that teach painting. The school was in Spokane, just south of where I live. I learned painting on a whole new level and various other skills, such as collision repair, upholstery, welding, etc. After school, I returned to my hometown and worked for my uncle's business. Within a few years, my uncle informed me that he would quit the painting industry and move to something less stressful, since he was approaching 60. Now, my uncle didn't have too many employees, 7 in total, not counting me, but he did have tons of equipment and a few vans set up for painting. So I asked to buy him out and start my own business. We settled on a price, and I bought him out and went out on my own. At first, managing the few employees and incoming business was easy, but finding work became quite difficult and stressful when winter arrived. Most employees would work different jobs during the slow times, but only 2 of the 7 employees returned when spring came around. I kept doing most of the work, which was not ideal, but it saved me a lot in the long run. After a few years, I sold off most of the extra vehicles and ran the business mainly alone. In the years following the housing crash, 2007 through 2008, I managed to stay busy, sometimes hiring back a few of the painters I knew during the busy seasons. One day during the summer of 2012, I received a phone call from a lady who had inquired about some of my work at the local pizzeria, which I'd done years ago when I worked with my uncle. She inquired about doing some cabinet work and aging the wood to make her newly remodeled log home look more rustic. Over the phone, I explained to the lady that the pizza place was made with multiple layers and various tints of conversion varnish, which is more commonly used in commercial settings because of its durability. Very few homeowners used it. The lady explained she instantly knew that was the look she wanted when she visited the pizzeria. She asked the owner about the cabinets, and he referred her to me. After my experience of doing that kind of work, and knowing how long the process takes, not to mention the product used for the finish was horrible smelling, I wanted to dissuade her from using the conversion varnish. So I explained the process of aging the wood and then distressing it. I shared with her the coating was a conversion varnish and it's a 2-part mixture. Part A is the varnish and Part B is the catalyst or hardener. Once mixed, it stinks, and no one can occupy the space for quite some time until it has dried and is done off-gassing. I wanted to see if she was interested in using another product. I even shared a story of what happened when I first used that product. At first, I didn't wear my respirator when refurbishing the pizzeria, as I thought there was enough airflow. I remember I felt horrid. I had massive headaches, couldn't smell, was teary-eyed, and was just out of it mentally. When my uncle showed up at the job site, he let me have it, sending me home and telling me not to come back until my headache was better. He said I was most likely overexposed to the chemicals in the conversion varnish. When I came back, he gave me a respirator and had me read up on the stuff and the toxins. Even though I knew the hazards, I never took them seriously. But I learned firsthand the importance of PPE. This might seem like a lot of info, but it plays a role in my encounter. Back to the lady on the phone. After explaining how bad the stuff was, she said it would be okay because she wouldn't be living in the place for a while, as she was a snowbird. Where I'm from, that means she goes south during the winter months. When I asked about the place's location, she explained it was about an hour north, just along the Canadian border. I explained that I knew the area well, as my grandparents used to live there before they passed away in the early 2000s. I asked her if the place was near the bridge that had flooded earlier that year. She said it was the log home nearest to the bridge, and this was the reason for the remodel, since part of her home had been damaged during the flood. I remembered seeing a few pictures of the flooding in the local newspaper. I knew about it, but not the reason. But apparently, as she said, the bridge over the river was too low, and they had an early spring and it rained a lot, melting the snow and overflowing the river. A lot of debris got stuck under the bridge and dammed up the river, which caused the river to rise and flood the houses along the riverbank. She told me she had recently purchased the home and bought it as is. When she had it remodeled, she purchased new wood cabinets and flooring and redone all the walls with tongue and groove instead of sheetrock. She said she wanted the cabinets and tongue and groove aged and covered with the same coating as that pizzeria. I thought this would be expensive with all the work that goes into aging wood and the many coats of varnish it takes. I never bid over the phone since you don't know what you're getting into. When she asked about the price, I explained that I would give a ballpark figure because I couldn't give an honest bid without seeing the project first. After I gave my ballpark figure, She seemed not to bat an eye and said okay. That weekend, I drove up and walked through the areas she wanted to be done. It turned out the house exterior was done in half logs to give it the look of a traditional log home, but the interior was just like a typical house. She wanted the kitchen and bathroom cabinets done in black and all the tongue and groove in those areas done in white. I worked up the details on an invoice and passed her the official bid. I planned to start at the beginning of October. She said she was considering inviting her family up to use the house over Christmas, and I assured her there was plenty of time for the conversion varnish to dry and off gas. When October came, I filled my van with everything I'd need. I drove up to the house. The first week at the cabin was spent prepping the wood, scratching it, putting saw marks in it, and distressing it to give it that old rustic charm. I was not looking forward to the next week, as that's when the conversion varnish would start. I remember coming home my first Friday night from there, and my wife had bought me my first smartphone. This was an upgrade from my old sliding phone. I asked why she purchased it, as my old phone was perfect. Then she called me on a video app called FaceTime, and I was blown away. She explained it was a new feature, that it would make better sense now that we could talk face to face. I am a simple person, and when I asked what was wrong with a phone call, she just laughed. That night, she walked me through my new phone, transferring numbers and all that fun techie stuff. This distracted me from my work. When Monday rolled around and I left, I didn't realize I'd completely forgotten to buy more filters for my respirator until I reached the cabin. At that point, I didn't want to drive an hour back home and another hour back to the cabin. I emptied my van, looking for filters, and found my uncle's air-fed suit and pump, which he had used for sand and soda blasting many years ago. It was tucked away in the spare tire compartment. Glad I never had a flat yet. Knowing firsthand how potent the varnish was, I hooked up the suit and said what the heck, thinking at least no one would see me in this thing, as I looked pretty odd. If you don't know what an air-fed suit is or looks like, it is just as it sounds. A suit with a hose running to it to feed the suit air from the outside. There's a valve to control the airflow, which is crucial as you don't want air flowing back into the suit. When 3 p.m. rolled around, I was about a quarter of the way done with the first coat of the white conversion varnish on the tongue and groove. I needed to mix up a new batch of varnish, so I cleaned out my sprayer. Side note, once the stuff is mixed, it has a pot life of about 4 hours before it starts to cure chemically, so cleaning my sprayer out between batches is critical. I walked outside and removed my hood. I tried to video call my wife to surprise her, but I didn't see the app icon. So I texted her and explained I would stay until I was done. Most likely I would be home around 1 or 2 a.m. After I started to work again, I saw storm clouds outside. If you're familiar with a job site, most workers listen to a radio, and you'll hear weather reports between songs. But not me. At that point, I was using an iPod and had playlists to listen to. Little did I know that a massive storm was forecast. When it started to rain heavily, I was a bit surprised. But this is Washington after all, and we get a lot of rain. Around 4 p.m., I got a text message about a flash flood warning. Dang, I thought. These smartphones are innovative. At about 9 p.m., my wife FaceTimed me. I turned off my air-fed suit and walked out of the kitchen, doffing off my suit. Each time before, when I removed my hood, I had done so outside. But as soon as my head came out of the suit inside, I was reminded of the horrid, intense smell of the conversion varnish. I plugged in my headset and chatted with my wife, and made my way to the restroom. I was trying to figure out how to use the restroom while video chatting. I told her I felt weird, and she made fun of me and said to call her back. After I finished my business, I called her back via FaceTime. While chatting, I told her the fumes were too strong, so I was putting the suit back on. While doing so, I set my phone on the countertop facing up. When I was almost done donning my suit, my wife let out a blood-curdling scream and I nearly hit the floor in shock. All I heard was,
"Jake, the ceiling, look up!"
As I turned, I saw a blackish, hairy hand with what I thought was claws lifting the attic door out of place from inside the attic. As quickly as I saw that hand, the hand dropped the lid, leaving it slightly cracked open. My wife was yelling that there was someone in the attic and that she would call the police from our landline. I told her, "Hang on just a sec. Did you see the hand?"
"That's all I saw,"
she exclaimed.
"I can't see that close looking through a camera."
"That wasn't a hand. It was a paw. I think there's an animal up there," I told her. "Not sure though. I need to go have a look." I finished putting on the gear, ensuring my corded headset was weaved through the zipper so I could still be on the phone. I turned on my air and told her I was going up into the attic to take a look, because I wasn't sure what it was. I could hear her in the background trying to argue with me, but I'd already made up my mind. I told her to calm down and just watch. I positioned the phone the best I could, but the phone was outside my suit and attached to my headset. So no matter which pocket I put it in, the phone would slide down deep covering the camera. So I did the next best thing I could think of, a painter's trick I learned from my uncle. I rolled up some blue masking tape sticky side out, stuck it to my suit, then stuck the phone to the tape. Now my wife could see what I could see. I went and grabbed a flashlight. I took my ladder, swung it around, and placed it under the attic access. My wife kept asking me to stop slowly as the camera would freeze and cut out during my swift movements. Then, right before I proceeded up the stairs, I thought I should grab my spray gun with my short 12-inch extension on it. I hung it from my belt, then started up the ladder. Right before I headed up the stairs, I told her to call the police if something were to happen. I cracked open the access door and tossed it aside, but didn't go up straight away. I just waited briefly at the top of my ladder to see if I saw anything up there, like flashlight movement, in case it was a person. To my surprise, as I looked up there, just on the edge of the access was a light switch. "There's a light switch for the attic," I exclaimed. I used my spray gun extension to switch the light on. I expected to see something, but I didn't. So I slowly poked my head up into the attic, taking quick looks in every direction, but still saw nothing. I noticed a light at both ends of the attic, and one just above me. The attic appeared to be covered with OSB sheeting. After gaining more confidence, I told my wife, "Well, here I go." I climbed up there quickly, stood up, and looked around. At first, since I was scanning, I didn't see anything until I slowed down. That was when my eyes locked onto this mass of fur along one of the walls. The fur was dark brown, almost black, but not a true black. It was like looking at a black cat and slowly understanding that the fur was a deep brown instead. "Honey," I said, "there's a black bear up here." She responded,
"I see it, but how did it get up there?"
"No clue," I said. Then the bear, or what I thought was a bear, moved and stood on two bony legs, separating itself from another creature of the same size, but its color was more brown, more like tree bark. The creature was just around a foot shy of touching the attic ceiling when standing. Its fur looked wet and dirty, with clumps of mud in it. Then I noticed that the arms of the beast, standing, had hands like a human's, but ended with sharp, pointy ends, and I knew that those were the claws I'd seen. As I tried to talk to my wife, she became hysterical, yelling,
"What kind of a bear is that? Is that even a bear?"
"I don't know what it is," I whispered back. My wife kept saying, "Get out of the attic," but I didn't respond. The creature that had moved off the other one had its back towards me, and now slowly turned around to face me. The thing had the head of a wolf, a long snout and big ears that stood straight up, coming to a 90-degree angle, turning inwards. It had a long tail with short hair hanging straight down. The creature's eyes shined an amber-yellow glow, and it swayed side to side. I was scared before when I thought it was a bear, but now this genuine fear set in. A rush of memories and emotions ran through my mind. It's so hard to explain in writing, but when I was little, there were these two cartoons that scared me. Even as a grown man, I wouldn't say I liked watching them because of the memories of the fear I felt as a child. The first cartoon was Peter and the Wolf. The wolf scared me as a child to the point when the music came on the TV, I would run and hide. The second one was Lambert, the sheepish lion. The wolf's eye in the cartoon would glow a yellow-orange, and this creature in front of me had the very same eyes. It was like my childhood fear had just come alive, and was even more terrifying than I could have imagined. To put it politely, if I hadn't just used the bathroom, I think I would have produced a gold nugget from my backside that would have made the California Gold Rush look like a cereal box prize. I could hear my wife yelling at me, snapping me out of my daze. "Oh my God, it looks like a werewolf," I told my wife as I gathered my thoughts. Looking at it gave me an adrenaline rush and a feeling like I wanted to pass out simultaneously. My wife was talking to me, but my attention was focused on the creature. As I inspected it more, I noticed its eyes were watering and its nose was running. I could see its chest, which looked like it was breathing shallowly as it slowly swayed from side to side. "I think the fumes must have disoriented them," I said, interrupting my wife. She said,
That has to be someone in a suit trying to scare you. It's October after all. Halloween is close. Stores are selling costumes.
"No," I calmly replied, trying to hold it together. "Whatever this is, I think it's real." The creature began to walk forward slowly. "Hold on, don't come any closer," I yelled through my hood, and I reached down and turned up my air supply, which started to inflate the suit. I thought I would try to make myself look bigger, like they tell you when you see wild animals. The creature did stop, but kept swaying. The one behind it stayed facing the wall, sitting hunched over, and when I looked at it, I thought I saw a tiny little arm and leg moving behind it. My thought was, there's no way that thing was holding a puppy. I moved a little for the first time, and this werewolf-looking thing growled at me. The growl was deep, as if I could almost feel it in the pit of my stomach. I raised my spray gun at it, and it growled deeper. It was like it knew, like it was smart, like it recognized something being pointed at it and knew that it was dangerous. My phone must have frozen, because my wife's voice returned to my ear.
Jake, answer me.
I replied, "I'm still here. Can you see what I'm looking at?" She said,
I'm so scared. I don't know what they are.
Now I was putting two and two together. "Honey, these things are up here with a baby." She started to say something, but I cut her off. "Just listen. The fumes from my conversion varnish disoriented them. Otherwise, this one right here would have already attacked me." As I was talking, my eyes caught a glimpse of a round louver vent on the back side of the attic, almost directly behind the creature. Mud streaks were sliding down the attic wall under it. "Honey," I said, "they came in through the louvers. The louvers tilt and open and they probably crawled in to escape the horrible weather." I looked at the creature, which kept on swaying. Its eyes were so creepy that I didn't want to look at them, but I managed to keep it in my sights as I slowly backed up to the louver behind me on my side of the attic and tilted it open. When I did, the air current shifted, letting in fresh air. Then I stepped back and carefully walked towards the attic opening. The creature growled at me several times, but it didn't move. I pointed at the window and began to yell, "Get out! Go on! Leave! Get out of here!" I then pointed at the opening. Then the creature started to advance towards me, not the opening. I realized I might have provoked it by yelling like that. Then it moved very fast. I grabbed my spray gun and sprayed white conversion varnish in the air. It stopped, appearing shocked at the sound and action of my spray gun. Then the creature turned, like it was going to swing around one of the trusses, but when it moved and turned, I sprayed the beast with my spray gun, leaving a massive white streak down the middle of its back. The creature let out a bellow and a nasty hiss, but with the smell and stickiness from the varnish, the beast didn't turn back to me. I could see its hands trying to feel around, almost like it was trying to feel its own back, which would be natural for any person to do if they felt something on their back. I realized then my wife was still frantic over the phone, calling my name and saying she was trying to find someone up here to call. I told her I was fine and had just let the creature have it with some fresh varnish across its back. As I returned to the access point, I could see the other werewolf creature fully. It was curled up like a dog, with not just one puppy but several. I quickly returned to the access and started down the ladder. The werewolf I'd sprayed was now rubbing its back along a truss, trying to get the varnish off. When it heard the ladder, it pulled away from the truss, like it was going to come after me. Then I saw its backside, which now had a black line down the middle of it from the varnish it rubbed off onto the truss, and I thought to myself that it now looked like a giant skunk. I grabbed the lid and slid it back into place as I hurried down the ladder. I quickly doffed off my gear as I ran to the door, pulling my phone off the tape, and I took off. I ran through the downpouring rain and just left. My wife was frantic on the call home. For the first several minutes, she kept asking if that creature had followed me. I didn't even want to look in my rearview mirror to check. When I got home through that horrible weather, my wife checked me over several times to ensure that I was okay. I filled her in on the parts where she'd cut out. I told her I wanted to get a hold of my friend Max, who I grew up with, as he was now a sheriff in my county. I wanted him to go back up there with me to help me gather my stuff. When I contacted him, I told him what I'd seen. He acted rather surprised, but I'd known him since first grade, and he knew that I was a no-nonsense person when it came to things like this. He agreed to go up there with me, after his shift the next day, to help me get my stuff and check the place out. When we arrived, it was just as I had left it. The first thing I checked was the attic access. The access door was still on. We checked all the rooms, but there was no evidence of any werewolf creature to be seen. We then proceeded to my ladder under the attic door. My friend went up first and called me up. The attic was clear. When we looked around, my friend saw everything I described. Varnish on the truss, mud under the louver vents, massive paw prints around the attic. He swore then, using a few choice words, then said, "I was hoping you were wrong. I thought you saw just a mangy bear, but these are huge wolf prints, man. Dang, no one's gonna believe this. I mean, I've gotten some weird sighting reports before, and I've heard about weird sighting reports from Jared. You remember him from school? He's a park ranger now. We usually meet for coffee a few times a week or so, or go shooting and exchange stories. But this," he paused, "this takes the cake." He sighed and asked if it was okay to call Jared, to tell him about this. I had no arguments, but said to keep it between us for now. He called Jared, who said he was going to drive up and have a look for himself. Max walked over to the louver vent, tipped it up, looked out for a minute, and said, "There are prints all over the roof. Think it's safe to say those creatures are gone." I replied, "There isn't much up here besides the mud and prints. I think those things saw the louver vents open and just wanted out of the rain." Max agreed, "But to be safe, maybe you should screw the louvers shut while you finish the cabin." "You are going to finish it?" he questioned me. "Suppose so," I replied, "but I'm bringing up a few other painters to finish. I ain't painting alone up here again. I'm not painting at night either." We returned to the ladder and headed down. I inspected my equipment while waiting for Jared. My sprayer was seized as the conversion varnish had dried and hardened in the lines in the pump. All my other equipment was okay. When Jared arrived, we walked him through the scene of the vents. He was a little shocked, but not as shocked as I thought he would be. Then I asked him if any other individuals had reported seeing these werewolf creatures. Jared told me he gets more Bigfoot sightings than anything. He'd heard of the Dogman before, but had never had a report. Nor has he heard of other park rangers getting reports. "It's all Bigfoot up here. Everyone always reports Bigfoot. But a few reports," he said. "Could be other things, as the reports didn't coincide with normal Bigfoot sightings." Jared went on for a bit about a few recent sightings. He finished up and said that they usually just report most things as bears. He told me it was best if I informed the homeowner that I should explain that a delinquent bear cub had entered the attic during the flash flood, and I subsequently did what I had to do, but ended up leaving when the bear cub didn't. After a few minutes of chatting and catching up, we left and drove back. I called the owner explaining what had happened and used the delinquent bear cub story as a cover. The lady said she felt terrible that I had to spray it with varnish, but she was glad that I wasn't attacked. She said she would change out the louver vents for genuine windows now. I didn't return to the cabin until Friday, when I had 2 other painters lined up to help me finish the cabin. I explained about the bear cub to them and how I'd left in a hurry. We cleaned up and finished that project. Now, when I drive past the pizzeria or hear the word conversion varnish, my mind returns to the night of my encounter. Putting words on a page or a voice on a podcast can't express the fear you feel when you are truly terrified. I'm glad my wife could have part of this experience, because now she knows there are things out there that we can't explain. When she tells me she's going to upgrade my phone, I joke, "Remember what happened last time you did that?" My favorite is when I get a text asking me to FaceTime, and I'd respond, "Remember my first time using FaceTime?" Although we try to get some laughter out of the encounter, it was genuinely horrifying, and I wish to never see one of those creatures again. Next time, if you happen to be in northern Washington and you see a giant skunk, take a second look, as it might just be a painted werewolf. What was that? From Ducklord. The story I'm going to share with you happened to my father and uncle. You see, my father, whom we'll call S, was a truck driver, and my uncle, N, was driving with my dad on a cross-country trip during his holidays. My uncle and dad were both young back then. My dad was 22 and my uncle was 16. On day 3 of the trip, they entered Nevada around dusk. About an hour later, my dad mentioned he wanted to pull into the next rest stop, and my uncle agreed. They looked at their map and saw that one was about 3 miles away. As they got closer to the rest stop, my uncle pointed out to my father, "Take a look at that. That's one big coyote." He was mildly surprised. "Yeah," my father replied, glancing at said coyote. "Good Lord, that's really big," he exclaimed as the coyote disappeared into the small patch of forest they were driving through. Later, when they stopped at the rest stop, My father noted it was almost completely empty. He got an uneasy feeling in his chest, regretting that he had left his gun at home. My uncle spoke. "Finally, I gotta take a big one." He hopped from the truck and headed to the bathrooms across the truck stop. My dad quickly made his bed in the back of the truck and changed into some pajamas. As he was getting into bed, my uncle came sprinting back, yanking the door open, jumping in, and locking it. My dad asked, "Whoa, what's the problem?" Nothing, man. I heard something rustling in the bushes outside the bathroom," he answered in a breathless voice as he got dressed in his pajamas, then hopped onto the top bunk. Later that night, my dad was sleeping like the dead, but my uncle kept waking up to this soft tapping sound moving around the truck. It was like a dog's claws on wooden floors. After this happened a few times, he decided, screw this, and put his pillow over his ears to finally get some rest. The next morning, my dad woke up to the sunny Nevada day. He got up and went to the bathroom to brush his teeth and get cleaned up. When he came back to the truck, he noticed that the passenger side door was scratched, as if a dog's paws had dragged across it. After putting his things away, he had a smoke as my uncle came out of the truck, mumbling a good morning before heading to the bathroom to freshen up. When my uncle noticed the scratches as well, he asked my father if he had seen them. My father said, "Yeah, we can just get them painted over." They set off and stopped at the next gas station to get snacks. They passed Quinn River Crossing uneventfully. Halfway to Happy Creek, they pulled over to relieve themselves. As they climbed back into the truck, they heard a howl not too far from them, so they quickly jumped back in and drove away. Just after they passed Happy Creek and the roads were empty, my uncle asked if he could drive. My dad said yes, so they pulled over. As they did, something thumped against the trailer, and they swear they heard a growl, followed by a strange voice that said, "Ow." Without thinking, my dad put the truck in drive and floored it. The thing that hit them was now running next to the cab, keeping pace with the truck, which was now pressing 80 and still picking up speed. The creature smoothly went from running on 4 legs to 2 and started moving even faster, soon outpacing the truck. In the headlights, they could see fur and the hind legs of what looked like a dog or coyote. But the tail looked all wrong. It turned to look back at the truck, giving an evil-sounding shriek, the mix of a wolf's howl and a woman's scream and a rabbit's death cry. The terror my father and uncle experienced that night was beyond words. As they were about to hit the creature, it jumped onto the truck's hood and began to claw at the engine bay. My dad honked the horn and the creature jumped off, only for the truck to run it over. My dad pushed the truck over 100 miles per hour, desperate to escape. From a distance, they heard that same demonic screech. They got away safely. Luckily, the rest of the trip was uneventful. After they dropped off the trailer in Houston, and after many questions about their damage, they asked their dad to buy them plane tickets back to Seattle. So, they flew back, and when their dad asked what happened, their mouths stayed shut. They haven't talked about it much since. Doppelganger in Aisle 3. From Dragons Will Fly. This happened between 10 to 15 years ago. I work at a well-known American-based retail store, whose mantra of "save money, live better" will have any American reading this know what store this was. The store had recently had a renovation, and you could feel a sense of unease within its walls. It had been built in 2007, but the lands there, well, the lands had a history. A Dutch settlement, then an English settlement, a pirate hideout, a conservation project. But one part of its history that stands out the most is the fact that the New Jersey Meadowlands area was heavily used as a dumping ground since before World War II. A landfill for all sorts of wastes known to man, from the rubble of London during the Blitz to medical waste, mercury, and PCBs in the 60s. And of course, bodies. It's a fact that in 2002, when they were adding an additional exit on the New Jersey Turnpike to a train depot, they exhumed over 4,000 bodies. These bodies were found to be a potter's field created in the Meadowlands from the poor farms and mental asylums that were in the area back in the 1800s. These were the only known bodies that had been excavated during that time. Who knows how many more are out there, just waiting to be found. But enough about that. During my time at this store, there have been many instances in which the paranormal has shown itself. A shadow man had been spotted in the tire shop by a friend of mine who worked maintenance. Random products jumped off the shelf when no one was near the items, nor on the other side of the aisle. Roll-up doors opened on their own. You might hear someone else sneeze in the coolers when a person was by themselves inside a particular cooler. As often as some of these occurrences happened, one could brush them off as a possible natural incident. Items falling off shelves? Maybe it was just hanging somewhat on the edge, and gravity did the rest. Shadow man? Maybe a trick of the light. The roll-up doors? Well, that's a little harder to explain. The only time they open is by a button on either side of the door to the rooms that they section off. There's a sensor that allows the door to roll back up when something is blocking the auto-close of the door. This is a safety feature that keeps the door from closing automatically on a person. This sensor does not roll the door back up when the door is fully closed, however, because there's nothing that is blocking the sensor to tell it to roll back up. Yet, during these instances that it was fully closed, I'd seen it go up by itself. The first time it happened was when I had heard a sneeze from in there and went to investigate who it was. And of course, to my surprise, no one was inside. Maybe someone just sneezed really loud on the sales floor near the wall. I've never heard it happen before, and I'm more than certain people have sneezed in that same area, but maybe I just wasn't paying attention to the sounds. As for the door, I really couldn't think of a reason why it would have opened on its own. So my mind kept brushing aside these instances for the longest time. That was until the creepiest thing that happened to me in the store occurred. After this particular event, I could no longer try to logically push aside everything that I'd seen within that store. I was working overnight, stocking shelves and ensuring the store was ready for the daytime when most of the clientele would come in for all their needs. I'd just finished stocking the merchandise that had come in off the truck during the afternoon and was looking for my work colleagues. I'll refer to them as C and L. I needed their help to get the TVs from the back. As soon as I turned to head toward the stockroom, I noticed C standing a couple of aisles away from me, just staring at me. Speak of the devil, I thought to myself, as I smiled at him before calling out to him. Perfect timing, man. I was just about to come looking for you. C didn't say a word to me, and I thought this was very strange. I was about to open my mouth again when he turned his back and started to walk away from me, heading towards the back room. I was a little aggravated by this. I know he'd heard me, but he didn't even acknowledge me. I know I had the music turned on in the electronics aisle, but it was nowhere near loud enough for him to not hear me. And he certainly should have seen my mouth moving, even if he couldn't hear me. I rolled my eyes and started to follow him, calling out to him every so often to get his attention. He wasn't exactly far from me, maybe 20 feet at most, and so I was able to keep him in my line of sight, even though he was much taller than me and had a longer stride. When he turned the corner of the last aisle in the department to head towards the stockroom, I followed suit. He had just turned the corner 2, maybe 3 seconds before me, and as I turned the corner, he was no longer there. The double doors to the back weren't even swinging. I pushed through the doors, just knowing that C was back in the stockroom. I hadn't seen him back there yet, but it didn't mean that he wasn't there. I just saw him head that way after all, and I was really irritated that he hadn't responded to me at all while I was calling his name. As I got to the end of the short hallway, I decided to turn to the left, which is the area that housed the back stock of televisions. If I couldn't find him back here, I was planning on just getting the TVs myself, so I could just keep myself busy through the rest of the night, and not have to be moved to another area. As I turned the corner, I heard voices further down the room I entered. It was where the store kept all the excess apparel, as well as the merchandise that I've been on a quest for since the beginning of when I saw C. As I moved closer to the TVs, I suddenly recognized the voices. C and L were back here. My irritation grew anew as I got closer to them and heard their voices louder. "What the heck, C?" I started as I turned the corner into the section of steel their voices were coming from. My eyes widened as I noticed that he was in the middle of moving TVs on the very top of the steel, and L was midway on the steel, reaching up for the televisions C was handing down. "What the heck what?" L asked, as he grabbed the merchandise and brought it to the lower shelf, so he could hop down and pay attention to me without the risk of falling. C sat down on the top shelf of the steel and started to swing his legs, while he waited for me to continue speaking. I was floored. I knew that there was no way for him to have made it up to the top of a 20-foot rack in the time frame that I'd seen him on the floor and lost sight of him. It just wasn't feasible, especially when he wasn't even out of breath at all. "Everything okay?" L asked, with confusion in his eyes. He noticed I was trying to wrap my head around something, and was apparently confused as to what I could possibly be trying to figure out. "How long have you been back here?" I asked, trying to get a basic understanding of what could have possibly happened and who I actually saw. Even though I'd worked with C for well over a year now and knew what he looked like. "Well, I haven't been keeping time, but we've gotten rid of about 5 pallets of TVs now, so maybe half an hour," C answered from his perch on the rack. "And you both have been together here this whole time?" I asked, even though I knew it was more than likely true. A single person could put away the TVs, but to put them on the top and to bring some down to make it easier to reach would be very difficult for one person. "Of course we have," L said, as he pushed his glasses up his nose. "What's really going on?" I sighed as I ran my hand through my hair. I told them everything, how I saw C in electronics and spoke with him, and he had ignored me. I told them how I followed him to the back room and how I found both of them busy at work. "Are you sure it looked like me?" C questioned as he scratched the side of his cheek. "Of course I'm sure," I replied irritably. "It's not like you have a family member working here that looks like you, like L does." "I don't know what to tell you," C started, as he moved to stand back up. "I've been up here this entire time, and I haven't come down yet, so you couldn't have seen me in electronics." "A ghost," L whispered, as he leaned against the rack. "I know people say the place is haunted," I started, as I glanced around the area. "I've seen some weird crap here too, but really? This place isn't that old." "I know, but Flack has said there was some crazy things that happened in the past here, so maybe the land has something to do with what you saw," L stated, with certainty, as he glanced between himself and C. Flacco was an older woman who worked with us, and L was dating her daughter at the time. Flacca isn't her real name, but everyone called her this name, as it was Spanish for someone who was skinny. She'd lived in the area for a long time, and knew parts of the history of the area, especially more of the family aspect of the history. Ever watch The Sopranos? If so, then you know what I'm talking about. It has never been found as fact that anything of that nature occurred here, but it is heavily rumored by anyone who lives here. I nodded my head slowly and decided to change the topic back to what I'd wanted to speak with him about previously. Even though I was talking about the televisions I needed, my brain kept replaying the incident that had transpired. A ghost, I thought, as C and L started to bring down more of these smaller TVs that I needed from the top. It makes sense. There's no way C could have gotten up there in enough time to beat me to the back room. He would not have been halfway up the rack before I got to him. And they both looked very confused at what I said. I looked around me again as all these thoughts ran through my mind. As the years have gone by, I've yet to see anything as strange as I had back then. As the store continued to grow in popularity within the community, the number of customers has grown exponentially. So to help with this influx, more associates had been hired on. The more crowded it got, the less likely something paranormal happened. At least to the extent I'd seen. There were still little things, items falling off the shelf when no one was around, and sometimes I would hear someone call my name softly, and of course, there would be no one around me. The store is currently going through another remodel as I write this. Nothing has ramped up as of yet, but the last time any activity popped up was after the remodel. With the extra associates around, I believe there may be little things that happen, but nothing quite as big or dramatic as seeing a doppelganger in the store. George, Oscar, and Maurice. From Eagle Scout 610. George, Oscar, and Maurice are three of, if not the most frequent customers at the movie theater I've been an usher at for the last 5 years. In fact, they're at the theater every single day, which is something most of our most devoted regular customers can't even do. How is this possible? Well, George, Oscar, and Maurice are the names of the three ghosts that inhabit the place. I'll go over each of them in order of least to most annoying. If there's any upside to having this many ghosts running about, it's that they're all harmless, so far. Annoying, yes, but I don't think they've harmed anyone. First off is Maurice. His story is the most tragic out of the three, as he's the only ghost we know the origin of. You see, his full name is Grandpa Maurice, and the story is that in the late 90s or early 2000s, an old man came to see a horror film and ended up dying during the movie, being found by the cleaning crew after the film was over. I still don't know how nobody in the theater noticed, but I guess that's beyond the point. The strangest thing about Maurice's story, however, is that nobody remembers exactly where he died. Some longtime employees say Theater 4, some Theater 5, others Theater 12. But it doesn't really matter. If you enter a theater after a movie, there's a chance Maurice is there with you. Despite the tragic story, Maurice is the most harmless of all our ghosts, in the sense that he doesn't try to interact with people. The worst he can do is give you an intense feeling of being watched when you're alone in a theater. He'll also appear out of the corner of your eye, looking like a customer sitting in a chair, only to vanish when you turn to look at the chair in question. I found the best way to prevent problems with Maurice is to say, "Good morning, Maurice," and "Good night, Maurice," when opening or closing the theater for the day. Oscar is a little more intense than Maurice. I don't know where Oscar came from, but he's named after the Grouch on Sesame Street. He got that name because he hangs out in the trash hall, where we keep our bins and cans before taking it all out for the night. Every so often Oscar gets, well, grouchy, and will move the cans that are lined up back there. I've even seen him do it. I was tossing a bag of trash into the bin when one of the cans behind me rolled for about a foot before coming to a stop. Let me tell you, It never stops being frustrating walking into the hall and finding that the cans are now everywhere, and there's often trash all over the floor. Moving cans is one thing, but Oscar will also mess with the service elevator in the back hallway, too. Every so often, while emptying a bag of trash, I'll hear the elevator activate, come back up, we're on the second floor, and open. Every single time this happens, footsteps can be heard stepping out of the elevator. That elevator is around a corner, down another stretch of hallway, which is about 100 feet. So a normal person's footsteps would not be that loud at that distance. Now you may be saying, aren't you in a movie theater? Couldn't it just be footsteps from a movie? No. Every single time it's two very distinct clunks on the concrete door. Sometimes the sounds get closer, and right when they're about to turn the corner to get to where the bins are, they stop. As far as I know, there's no way to counter Oscar, other than pray he's in a good mood. I've tried saying goodnight and good morning to him, but that doesn't help. Much like the Muppet he's named after, Oscar is just an uncurable grouch. Lastly, there's George. To put it bluntly, George is just a rear end. Like Oscar, I have no idea where he came from, but I also have no idea how he got the name George. But George will run around the theater, causing all sorts of problems. From burst pipes when they were just checked, to the paper towels in the dispensers going missing only moments after being filled, to lights flashing once during a movie, then going dark again, and much more. The most memorable encounter I've ever had with George was around Christmas 2022. We usually had a big cardboard standee for a movie behind the podium, where customers scan their tickets to see the movie. I was training this new girl at the podium, and we were discussing the weird things that go on here. At the time, those weird things had slowed down. She said something along the lines of, "Ghosts? Yeah, I don't believe in those." When, moments later, the standee tipped over. It was one of the big, heavier, thicker standees too, not just a thin piece of cardboard. "Did you do that?" she asked, thinking I had done it to scare her. I shook my head. I know how difficult those things were to set up, not to mention heavy, so pushing one over as a joke would have likely cost me my job. "I see you met George," was all I could respond with. There was no one else in the lobby, and the AC vent in the ceiling couldn't move a standee that big. That girl didn't last long after that, maybe another shift or two. I was told it was because she missed a shift, but I have a feeling George might have driven her out. There's a couple of people who quit after a shift or two too, but the word around the theater is George had something to do with those as well. I'm still at the theater to this day, and I'm sure that if I'm here, George, Maurice, and Oscar will be here too. Maybe if George causes the bathrooms to flood again, or Oscar cuts the elevator lights again, I'll be back to write about it. Thanks for tuning in to Tales from the Break Room, the home of the scariest true work stories. If you want to hear your story narrated by me, send it to me at eeriecast.com/submit. We pay 5 cents per word for accepted stories. Help us grow by leaving Tales from the Break Room a rating and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app. Check out eeriecast.com or search for EerieCast on those very same podcast apps to see our other exciting and terrifying podcasts, like Unexplained Encounters, the other show I host, where I read stories with a focus on the supernatural. To get some merch, go to eeriecast.store. And to unlock ad-free episodes of your favorite EerieCast shows and exclusive audiobooks, go to eeriecast.com/plus and consider signing up for EerieCast Plus. You can follow me on Twitter, I guess it's X now, @DarkPrevails. You can also subscribe to me on YouTube, where I deliver the same content. Just look for Darkness Prevails. Good night. I hope we can share another break sometime soon.